All right, let's get into it. We're about to deconstruct one of the greatest psychological thrillers of all time. We're going inside Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment to look at not just the story, but the actual architecture of guilt he built, brick by painful brick. This right here is the central question of the entire book. See, this isn't your typical whodunit. We know who the killer is from page 1. The real suspense, the real mystery, is what happens after the crime, when the entire battlefield moves from the dark streets of St. Petersburg into the claustrophobic prison of a single human conscience. So here's the basic setup. Our main character, Raskolnikov, is a brilliant but desperately poor former student. He comes up with this really dangerous theory that some people, the extraordinary ones, like Napoleon, are basically allowed to break the rules, even commit murder, for some greater purpose. And to prove to himself that he's one of them, he decides to test this theory in the real world. Now let's be honest, for a lot of people who pick up this book, it can be a really tough read. It can even be frustrating. But what if I told you that frustration is actually part of the design? Let's dig into two really common critiques, because they actually unlock what Dostoevsky was trying to do.
This is a big one, right? You feel like you're just stuck in a loop with Raskolnikov. He does this terrible thing to prove he's above it all, and then he spends the next 400 pages in a sweaty, paranoid panic, basically proving the exact opposite. It can feel, well, repetitive. So why on earth did Dostoevsky write it that way?
And here is the absolute genius of it. For Dostoevsky, an idea is just an idea until it smacks into reality. The real punishment isn't the 8 years in Siberia he gets at the end. No, the punishment is immediate. It's the spiritual suicide, that awful, feverish isolation from every other human being that hits him the second the crime is over, that agonizing circular struggle, that is the punishment. Okay, here's the second hurdle for a lot of readers. The way the story is told can be incredibly jarring. One minute, you have a narrator calmly describing a room, and the next, bam, you are thrown headfirst into Raskolnikov's chaotic, fragmented thoughts, with absolutely no transition. It's designed to be confusing. And just like before, what feels like a bug is actually a feature. Dostoevsky wants you to feel lost. He wants you to experience the paranoia right alongside his character. He's not just telling you what guilt feels like, he's making you live inside it. It's a masterclass in psychological immersion. You know, there's a literary term for this technique. It's called free indirect discourse. By blurring that line between the outside observer and the character's inside voice, Dostoevsky literally traps you inside Raskolnikov's head. That tiny, stuffy apartment he lives in, it becomes a perfect metaphor for his own cramped, suffocating mind. So, keeping all that in mind, let's look at how this all comes together to build the story's structure. Once you understand his intentions, you can see the plot isn't just a series of events. It's a meticulously engineered psychological prison. The whole journey really breaks down into 3 distinct stages. First, you have the crime, which is born from pure intellectual arrogance. Then comes the long, brutal psychological war, where his grand theory just completely shatters under the weight of his own guilt and humanity. And finally, you have the path to redemption, which, as he finds out, can't be reached through logic at all. And this is brilliant. You have these 2 major forces pulling Raskolnikov toward confession, and they couldn't be more different. On one side is the detective, Porfiry, who represents pure logic and the law. He doesn't have evidence, he just plays these incredible mind games. And on the other side, you have Sonia, who represents faith, compassion, and unconditional love. It's the ultimate battle between the head and the heart. What's amazing is that even now, people still argue fiercely about the novel's ending. A lot of critics feel that Raskolnikov's spiritual transformation at the very end feels a bit rushed or sudden. But for Dostoevsky, that moment was absolutely essential. It was the final, total rejection of the nihilistic ideas he was so passionately arguing against. Which brings us to the big question. Why are we still reading and talking about this book over 150 years later? Well, it's because Dostoevsky wasn't just writing a crime thriller. He was staging a war over the biggest philosophical questions of his day. And it turns out, of our day too. The entire book is a battleground for huge ideas. You have nihilism, the idea that nothing really matters, pitted against a belief in a higher morality. You see how Raskolnikov's arrogance creates this wall, alienating him from everyone. And the novel puts forward this challenging idea that suffering isn't just random pain, but maybe a necessary fire that purifies the soul. This is really the heart of it all. Dostoevsky was looking at the radical ideas swirling around in the 19th century, ideas like utilitarianism, that the ends justify the means, and he was terrified by them. The whole novel is one giant, powerful argument that if you remove a higher moral compass, morality just becomes a matter of opinion. And that is a very dangerous game to play. So, if you take one thing away, let it be this. Crime and Punishment is so much more than a story. It's an experiment. Dostoevsky literally built a psychological prison for a dangerous idea, this concept of the extraordinary man, just to watch it tear itself apart under the unbearable pressure of a real human conscience.
And that leaves us with a question that's just as urgent and unsettling today as it was in the 1860s. Raskolnikov was convinced his idea was brilliant, but it led to ruin. It forces every one of us to ask, if there's no ultimate right and wrong, how do we ever really know the difference between a great idea and a truly dangerous one?